Hey, friends. Well, it's day 15 of a 14-day detox experience. And what shows up for me today, if you haven't caught my previous posts, I've been on a 14-day raw vegan cleanse. The last 4 days were just strictly drinking fresh juice. Before that, kind of tapering meals down. Always a massive download of life information and just kind of emotional awareness, internal emotional awareness that takes place whenever I do this. And as I complete it, there's something that showed up for me the last day or two. You know, I'm somebody who has a pretty strong capacity for discipline, I think, in some ways. There's plenty of ways in which I am not as disciplined as I wish I were. But by and large, when I look at how I engage in something like this, I find that I have a real capacity to kind of see it through. And this is where it's that attribute is almost to a fault sometimes. In other words, there's a kind of hardness that creeps in and begins to push, for lack of a better word. And I feel it. I just feel it in my whole system. I feel this push. And I observed it the last couple of days as I was getting down towards the end and we were on a strictly juice diet. My system in particular, it's something about my metabolism. I tend to drop a lot of weight. When I'm in that last phase of the cleanse, I can drop an uncomfortable amount of weight. And I think that's partly due to my metabolism just kind of like, that's just the nature of it. It kind of races and burns a lot of energy. And when I go into a kind of lower, I'm not ingesting as much energy, it has to sort of, well, sometimes it keeps running, and then it has to kind of adjust to the fact that there's just not as much energy available, or it's a different form of energy. When you're drinking juice, you're getting a completely different kind of energy. So anyway, but throughout all of that, something hit me about softness and gentleness. And I almost see it as a really positive challenge for myself to be rigorous about being gentle. Because that's something that for me would be an evolutionary step. If I could enter those situations and be gentle with myself. It's not that I wouldn't still maintain the practice, but that there would be a sense of ease and care, kind of human, emotional care, which when I'm working with my daughter or playing with my daughter or, you know, there are times when it just comes out of me naturally. But I think there's a limit. I think like something like this cleanse experience takes me to a place where my underlying inclination to be goal-oriented kind of becomes visible. It becomes evident to me, and it becomes active. And I think at the end of this particular cleanse, I think I did a pretty good job of catching that and of noticing the underlying kind of hardness and going, breathing into ease. But I also, I also think that underlying hardness and that underlying drive is active across many areas of my life. I notice it in my relationship to creative work. There's a very high standard for myself there. I notice it in relationship to piano, and it's one of the things that my teacher, Madeline, has been systematically and relatively effectively dismantling over the past couple of years since I've worked with her. There's been a sense of, okay, you've got this rocket fuel energy. You got more than enough of that. What do you need in order to be able to burn it effectively, to expend it effectively, channel it? How much less can you burn, and how much more efficient and ultimately expressive will you be if you truly submit to this practice and this slight change in underlying philosophy about how this work gets done, how playing the piano happens. So I think it's no coincidence that at the end of the cleanse I'm getting a message that's very much in alignment with some of my other life lessons. Something like this is always a mirror. It's always a provocation to take another step, to kind of find patterns that we might have identified in one or two areas and identify them in a more holistic way. So I think that's my primary emotional takeaway from this last 2 weeks. My body's done really well with it. My mind has done pretty well with it. It's been, being in a prolonged state of renunciation, giving up a lot of the comfort foods, habitual foods that I ordinarily have in my life is a great practice, and it's illuminating. And I think, but there's a certain amount of like balance required in there. You have to kind of be ready to be wakeful and be conscious about food intake, because you're going to be forced, you're going to feel and experience things. You're going to experience desires that you have to kind of gently override. But I think rigorous gentleness is maybe my new mantra going forward, because it both acknowledges the level of discipline and excellence that I know is important to me in my life, but it also creates a sense of, that's who I really want to be. That's who I want to be in my teaching. I want my students to feel that first and foremost. You know, a teacher doesn't bring discipline to a student by sort of imposing it. You can only invite a student into their own. You can certainly create boundaries and you can create a structure, but ultimately it's that presence that evolves a student in whatever discipline you're working in. And when I think about who I want to be for my daughter, rigorous gentleness. So that's where I've landed. Annalise and I fly to Michigan today. Out of one experience into another. But I'm really grateful for this time. And I'm looking forward to breakfast. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this, as it invariably does, carries forward into my life. What new openings, what new opportunities, what new perspectives I'm able to take on in the upcoming weeks and months as a result of doing this, of a really kind of conscious relationship to food for a couple weeks. So thanks for watching, people. I appreciate all of you tuning in. It's really nice to see some of the comments. Thank you. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon.